Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to my talk, my monthly stamp chat. So today I'm going to deal with something a little off the beaten path, and it has to do with canceled to order stamps versus postally used. And I'm going to show you how to tell the difference between the two when you don't have any gum on the stamps. Most collectors, of course, know that certain Eastern Bloc countries, China, Cuba, various communist regimes during the 60s and 50s and up through the 70s issued a lot of stamps canceled to order with full gum at a discount off of face, usually to packet makers who put them into packets. The catalog prices for these items are always extremely low, with a caveat in the catalogs that genuine postally used examples are worth a lot more than the minimum catalog prices. And there are specialists out there who actually seek out the postally used stamps. The problem is a lot of collectors over the years have washed the stamps in order to remove the gum and to give the impression that the stamps are actually used when they're not. And so the question becomes, well, how do is there a way to tell the difference and to identify a genuine postally used stamp from one that isn't, that's CTO? And the answer is yes. There are characteristics that you can look at on the stamps, and I'm going to try and show you today using my new camera what we can look for and how we can tell that the stamps are postally used when or canceled to order, as the case may be. So the stamps I'm going to use today are Russian stamps from the 60s, and I'm just going to tilt my camera down here to show you where they are on my desk here. So here they are. There's I'll show you here. So there's this design here. Okay, you can see there. Okay, then we've got this design. Okay, and then we have this design here. Okay, so 3 stamps. So the first thing that you're going to notice if you look at a cancel to order stamp, the one thing that you're going to find is that the cancellation looks extremely perfect. It's extremely crisp. So I'm just going to rotate the gimbal back up here just so you can see me and I can show you the stamp in a better focus. So if you look at this stamp here, okay, you can see that the cancellation is extremely crisp. And if you look at it under a loop, and you I'm just going to grab a loop here. So if I look at this under a loop, I can see that the ink is completely on top of the design. It has not bled into the paper at all. It's completely on the surface of the stamp. And that's one of the dead giveaways. The ink used by the postal administrations at this time in the 50s and 60s had an oily quality to it, and it bled into the stamps. So here's an example of what I mean. Actually, I can give you 2. So if you take a look at this stamp here, it's not the best focus, but yeah, let me just adjust the focus here. So if you look at the cancellation here and down here, and you look at it under a loop, the way I'm doing, you're going to see a very slight bleed through from the cancellation into the paper. And so it's absorbed in. And that's one of the key characteristics of a postally used stamp from that period, is that there will be a slight bleed through of the cancel into the ink. Now the other thing is, and this isn't always the case for postally used, but you can see here that the cancellation hits the stamp twice. So it's a boom stamp boom of the hammer. So they've hit the stamp, gone back to the ink pad, charged it with ink, hit it again. And the simple reason for that is that quite often on the envelopes there's going to be more than one stamp. And they're trying to cancel all the stamps on the envelope, or they're just trying to hit it twice to make sure that they've canceled it properly. On CTO stamps, you never ever see that. Okay, CTOs, okay, if we take the CTO again that I showed you earlier, here's one here. Okay, so here, again, we've got the crisp, very crisp cancel here, but it also hits the stamp only once. And the other thing that's very clear about CTOs normally is that they always hit the stamps in the same place. So, or the same group of places. So if I have 100 of these and I go through them, I'm going to find eventually many copies where the cancellations are hitting the stamps in more or less exactly the same place each time. Or they're very similar because what the CTO has done is it's usually applied at intersections of the stamps along a column. So each stamp is getting a corner cancel and a part of the cancel. And so if you have a large quantity of CTO stamps of the same design, you're going to find that they hit the same, that you can sort them into 3 or 4 groups where the cancellation's identical and it's in the same spot. Now, that doesn't happen on genuine postally used stamps. Okay, postmarks, genuine postmarks, are like fingerprints in that they very seldom, if ever, would occur in exactly the same position on a stamp, on 2 stamps, I should say, or if they did, they would look slightly different. One would be heavier than the other, one might be slightly smudged, one might bleed through the paper more, one might damage the paper from being hit too hard. There's a dozen variables that could change the appearance of the actual postmark. It's very unlikely that you would find the same postmark in the same spot looking exactly the same. But on CTO stamps, that's very typical. Now, some will say that CTOs are always light. That's not necessarily true. Hungary has had a CTO where the cancel's actually quite heavy. They used a lot of wavy line CTOs that look almost postally used, but are not. So the giveaway for those is just the fact that they're identical, and also those ones don't bleed into the paper at all in a way that you would expect them to if they were actually applied using postal ink. Okay, so that's one characteristic. Now I'm going to show you, okay, so of this design here, so here's a postally used stamp. Now if we look, the cancel here it's not crisp. I got to get it into focus here. Okay, so that cancel's not crisp. It's in the upper corner, but it does not have this sort of perfect appearance. if you look at it under a loop, you're going to see that the ink at the top up here, the black ink, bleeds slightly through into the paper, which it does not do on those other stamps. And so that's how we identify that as postally used. Now in this case, when we turn it over, we can actually see some residual paper from the envelope. So this was not properly soaked. It was taken off the envelope. So we know it's postally used. But there's some trickier ones here. Okay, so here's an example of a CTO. Okay, again on this stamp, it's got a light, it's sort of a light cancel that's somewhat indistinct. It's not crisp, it's not clear, and it would be very easy to soak this stamp and think that it's postally used. It's not, because there's actual gum on here that we can see. But again, the giveaway on this, and this is another way that CTOs often appear, with these sort of muffled, indistinct cancels. But the giveaway here will be the lack of bleed through into the paper. Also, it's only hitting the stamp in the corner and only in the one spot. So, I mean, corner cancel does not automatically make it a CTO by any means. But typically, if a genuine postal marking has a corner cancel, you're going to see at least a little bit of bleed through. If you come across a corner cancel that displays no bleed through at all, chances are very good it's either a favor cancel or a CTO. So if we look under a loop on this muffled cancel, we can see no bleed through at all. It's literally almost floating right on top of the design ink. It hasn't soaked into the stamp at all. So that's another characteristic. Now, here's another stamp, another example. This one here is postally used. Okay, the cancellation is heavier. Okay, it is only in the one spot, but it covers more of the design than the other CTOs. And if we look at it under a loop, we're going to see that the ink does bleed through slightly. It's got a slightly oily quality. It's a grayish black instead of a jet black. It has all those characteristics of a genuine postal cancel. And if we look, if I look under the loop, I can see there's some bleed through, some spreading or diffusion of the oil component of the ink outward from the cancel, making it fairly clear that it was actually postally used. Okay, now there's some tricky ones. So here's an example of a CTO. The gum's been washed off. In my mind, it's very clearly a CTO. It's a fairly crisp cancel. It's not as crisp as the corner cancels I showed you on the other design of this series. But the giveaway here is when I look at it under a loop, it just doesn't have any bleed through. It's close to the postal cancel, but it's just a little bit too crisp to be a genuine postal cancel. Okay, this one here, this is postally used. This is it's a fairly crisp cancel, but if we look at it under a loop, it does have some bleed through, and it's fairly apparent that it actually is postal. It's come off an envelope. It's been soaked off. It is sock on the nose for a pair, but it's fairly consistent with actual covers that I've seen from this time period. Okay, then we look at another one here. Same design. Okay, now this one, this I think is a CTO. Yeah, if I look at this, it doesn't have any bleed through of the cancellation ink at all. And it's a little bit, it's just kind of weird. It doesn't go and extend all the way through to the bottom of the stamp. It's just slightly suspect looking. So those are some things to look for when you're looking at the stamps of regimes that issued CTO stamps. Now, another area where this will come in very handy is on something like inflation period Germany, for example. Now, there are other characteristics, and I'll deal with that in another video, that you'll need to look for if you're trying to do your own expertising of cancels on those issues, because there's certain characteristics of the actual cancel. And this is the other part I haven't touched on here. I mean, if you know the actual philately of the area that you're dealing with, and you know the cancellations, i.e. the diameters of the cancels, the fonts of the lettering, the type of ink, the way the dates appear, whether they appear in day, month, year, or year, month, day, or, do they include the day of the week? Do they include the hour? Do they include a code? Those types of things are invaluable as well for properly expertising cancels. But the test that I'm trying to give you here is a way for you to go through a large quantity of Eastern Bloc CTO material and pick out the few postally used stamps that are likely hiding amongst the collection. It's a quick and dirty way to sort through it, to try to identify the better postally used stamps that are in there. Now, Scott's not much of a help here, because even though they tell you that there's a premium to postal use, they don't tell you how much it is. And it's hard to get an idea of what that would be. I can tell you that for the countries I've worked on, the one that I'm most familiar with is East Germany, because I have the Meikle catalog, and Meikle actually identifies the difference between the CTO printed cancels on the 5-year plan definitives and the official stamps, and the actual postal cancels. And the differences are ginormous. Where, to give you an idea, it's quite common for stamps that catalog 25 cents or 15 cents. Minimum value for CTO might be $5 or $10 a piece if they're postally used. So that's a good area to get into if you can, because you can pick it all up for CTO prices, because very few dealers are ever going to go through their stuff to identify it properly. But you'll be able to pick up value without necessarily paying for it. So that's a few pointers on how to identify CTO versus postally used. Just to recap, how many places it hits on the stamp. Okay, CTO's only in one spot. Postally used can be in one spot, but quite often is in 2 or 3 spots. Crispness of the cancels. So genuine postal cancels can be crisp, but they're not perfectly crisp. CTOs are quite often perfectly crisp, in a way that it's clear that it wasn't applied by hand, and it's applied by machine. You can get muffled, uncrisp cancels with CTOs as well, so that's not a perfect test. Another point, bleed through of the cancellation ink. So genuine postal cancels almost always have some bleed through or some absorption of the cancellation ink into the fibers of the paper. On CTOs, you never see that. Okay, CTOs will always have the ink on top of the design, not bleeding through the paper. And that's, of all the characteristics I'm giving you, that's the one that requires the most judgment to identify, but it's the best one, in that it will always identify a CTO in a way that the others might not. And the last point is that on CTOs, the cancellation quite often will appear in the same 1, 2, 3, or 4 places on the stamp, because all of the sheets are canceled in exactly the same way. And in genuine postal cancels, no two stamps are ever exactly the same. Even if the cancel's in exactly the same position, there will be something about it that will be slightly different from its neighbor. And that's not the case with a CTO. So I hope that's helpful. This is the 21-minute talk, so fairly short. I'm going to check. I'm getting used to this new camera that I've got that's supposed to help follow around my desk, so I'll be able to do more practical talks, and look forward to the next one. Okay, well, thank you for coming. Bye.